Today, we're going to put the van's RV-7 through its paces. Alright, strapped in, and we're going to go through the basic startup procedures for the van's RV-7. This particular aeroplane with the Lycoming IO360 engine. So we are going to get this aeroplane started. Our backup battery is going to come on first, then our master switch. Our mags are going to go to both. Then all I'm going to do is just wait for the Garmin screen to boot up. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to run all its tests and diagnostics just to make sure that everything is aligned, everything is working correctly and calibrated. And what we can see here now on our engine page is that we have no fuel pressure, we have no fuel flow, we've got full tanks on both sides, and then we're going to switch the fuel pump on to get the engine primed. We're going to run it for about 3 to 4 seconds. Once the engine is primed, we can leave the mixture full rich, crack the throttle open and turn the key. So we're going to put the fuel pump on now. Fuel pump is running, pressure is increasing, fuel pump comes off, mixture full rich, and we're going to about a quarter open on the throttle. This particular aeroplane has a vertical power system, so we've only got one circuit breaker on the right hand side that is for the entire system, and the rest of them are electronic circuit breakers. So we can actually pull through our menu here and see exactly which instruments, which lights, all that type of thing are drawing amperage and where they are drawing amperage from. So alternator is on, vertical power system is drawing a total of 3.1 amps. Our battery is fully charged at 14.7 volts. Currently everything is being pulled from the alternator, so we can actually test that. Switch the alternator off. Alternator shows off, and it now shows that the draw is coming from the battery. So let's switch that alternator back on. We get our increase in voltage. All the power now is coming from the alternator. And then flaps are going to come up. We always leave the flaps on the aeroplane down when we have the engine off. That's just to make sure that nobody steps on the flaps when they're getting in and out of the aircraft. And even when the flaps are up, it tends to be a bit more of a leap to get over the flaps, even if you know they're there. So we actually just put the flaps down just to make sure that those don't get damaged. When we taxi, we lift the flaps up, and the reason for that is as we taxi, we don't want any rocks or stones flicking into the flaps coming from the main landing gear in front. But it's 10 to 7 now, and we are going to go out to the north, outside of the, away from the Johannesburg TMA. So currently we're underneath the Johannesburg TMA, which is only at 7,500 feet. We want to get to at least 8,000 feet, maybe 7,500 feet, to make sure that we are 2,000 feet above the ground. And we're going to do some air work in the RV-7. We'll do a couple stalls. We'll do some basic minor aerobatics. This was more of a video, kind of like a RV-7 review, if you want to call it that. Okay, taxi light will come on. Flaps are up, and we are ready to give it a little bit of RPM just to get up this little ramp here. Eagles Creek traffic, Juliet Charlie Oscar is taxiing to the holding point, runway 08. So what we're going to do now, backtrack all the way to the top, and then go into the loop. Eagles Creek traffic, Juliet Charlie Oscar is going to be entering and backtracking now, runway 08. The visibility in an RV-7 is not too bad. I've been told by a few people that I've got a long upper body, so I can see right over the nose, really. A lot of people do have to look down the side. And like I say, it's not too bad. It's not like a pits or anything like that, so there isn't really a need for S-turns or anything crazy. Okay, temps are ready for run-ups. I'm going to test our controls, make sure everything is free and correct, which it is. We've got flaps which are coming down. We use one stage of flaps, and that is a debatable topic with the RV community, but I feel one stage of flaps, just once it is ready to fly, it just pops off the ground rather than trying to force it off with some stick. Okay, seatbelts are on. We're going to get mixture full rich and give it a little turn out. We are at 5,000 feet here. Okay, we're about good there, 1840. We're going to test our mixture control. What we're essentially looking for here is a slight increase in RPM as we get to sort of peak EGTs. There's the increase, so we've gone from 1840 to 1850. I can feel the engine starting now to run a little bit rough, and we'll see the drop off in RPM. As we take more and more fuel away from the engine, we'll turn it back into its peak. There's about there, and then we're going to push it in for takeoff. Alright, test the prop. We'll do 3 pulls on the prop just to make sure there's some nice warm oil there. We want a decrease in oil pressure and a decrease in RPM. And that is what we were looking for. The next is going to be our mags. We'll check the right hand mag first. Our start base was 1850. So about 120 drop. Not amazing, but not bad. And we've got a split of about 10 between the two. Again, not amazing, but not bad. Back to both. We do recover to our full RPM that we were using, which is that 1850 RPM. Okay, we're going to roll back the power to test the idle, and we still have a fully operational engine at idle RPM, which is great. Now we're ready to line up, our lights are on. We'll get the fuel pump on just before we roll, and we're taking off here, runway 08. Let's just make a radio call. Eagles Creek traffic, Juliet Charlie Oscar is rolling now, runway 08 will be straight out departure. Okay, fuel pump's coming on, fuel pressure confirmed. And let's roll. Tail comes up pretty quickly in this RV. There we go, tail's up already. Okay, keep it on the center line. And she's flying. Flaps up.
Terrain.
So we keep the nose down just to build some airspeed. We're already at 100 knots at the end of the runway. We're going to click it up to 110, and there's our good climb speed. Alright, so we're climbing about 110. That's good for our cylinder head temperatures. We don't want those going over 400. Our highest at the moment is 389, which is nice. Get some airflow over there. Oil temperature still looking good. Flaps are up. Brakes, undercarriage, mixture we'll sort out just now. Prop we're going to bring back to 2,500 RPM. And then we will decrease the power to 65%. And once we get to 6,500 feet, we'll give the autopilot a bit of a run. What I'm going to do is click the level button on the autopilot there, 6,500. And what it should do for me now is I'm going to altitude select 6.5, I'm going to heading select, I'm going to hit heading and altitude. And what it's going to do is fly this exact heading now completely on its own, which is great. Relieves the workload off of me, because what I want to do now is start to calibrate the leaning on the engine. The lean assist feature is on, so as soon as the EGTs get to a peak temperature and then start dropping onto the what we call lean side, then we know we've gone past peak and we can actually richen it up. I like to fly about between 50 and 80 degrees rich of peak. We then watch just the cylinder head temperatures, make sure that they don't get too high. I know on this aeroplane they don't really go above about 380 degrees, which is perfect place to be. And there's our first cylinder peaking. We're going to wait for the next few to peak. We got the last third cylinder. Third cylinder is always the last one to peak. A little bit more of a turnout for the third cylinder. There's the peak. Alright, so now we are currently on the coldest cylinder, because we're on the lean side. On the coldest cylinder we're running at 36 degrees lean of peak. Our current fuel flow is 26 liters an hour. Again, I don't really want to go here. We're at 58% power, so we've lost 7% power by leaning it out. So what I'm going to do is, as I lean it back in, we're going to watch the power come back. We're already at 59. And we want to go beyond peak. Peak, we should get our full 65% power. Alright, and we want to go roughly 60 degrees for now, just for this flight, rich of peak. So we're currently at 70, and now we're looking at the hottest cylinder. The hottest cylinder is currently sitting at 63 degrees rich of peak. That is a really nice way to display it. It highlights the hottest cylinder, which is cylinder number 2. And we are currently 65 degrees rich of peak, which is great. So our fuel flow, 32.5 liters, 65% power, and 2,350 RPM. So We are currently doing 150 knots true at 6,500 feet. What tends to happen is as we get a little bit higher, about 8,500 feet, we do about 165 knots more or less. And it just shows you how incredible this aeroplane is. So getting from A to B is just wild. I mean, I did a flight just recently to Neisner. We'll definitely be filming the next flight that we do out that way, but it was 3 hours 10 minutes to do 550 miles, which is just unreal. I mean, we worked it out, and we'll definitely do a video as well on this someday. We worked it out that I left the house at the same time as Kiara, for example, my girlfriend, left the house. She was going commercial, I was going in this aeroplane. I would literally beat her to Neisner by over an hour. That's obviously because of how soon you have to be at the airport, you've got to check in, you've got to do all the things. Neisner is a bit more of a regional town, you've got to fly to a different town, which is about an hour's drive away from Neisner. So you can understand now why this is so valuable for that type of mission. And I'm flying to Neisner quite often, and yeah, it's just for my mission in terms of doing something like that, amazing. And with regards to the prices, I mean, sure, this is a little bit, if I'm sitting on my own, if I've got a passenger with me, then it's probably actually cheaper than flying commercially. But the prices are actually pretty good in terms of how much fuel this burns and what it would cost me to get to Neisner and then get back. Okay, so what we're going to do now is now that we're outside of the airspace for Johannesburg, is we are going to start doing some stalls and just some upper air work in the RV-7. In order to do that, I'm going to disengage the autopilot. I'm going to switch the flight director off and then make sure my autopilot switches off. So even though the autopilot is not operating, what the switch does is it's got the electronic stability protection, and that if I do overbank the aircraft in the eyes of Garmin, we get the wonderful lady saying, bank angle, and eventually she starts fighting me on the stick, which we certainly don't want to do when we are doing some air work. So with the air work, I want to put the mixture a little bit further rich. We're going to climb just a little bit and get this aeroplane climbing up. So 90 knots is VY. We're currently climbing at like 1,800 feet a minute, which is wild. We're going to do a clean stall from about here. Just start reducing the power. Alright, so that's pretty much all the power out. So there's the stall. And what actually happens is the aeroplane brakes forward, nose down first. You can feel the brake quite clearly. And we're still at 8,000 feet, so we haven't really lost any altitude. The brake in an RV-7 is very, very benign. So we saw there it broke around about 49 knots, more or less. We're going to start pitching the nose back up again. We're going to put the full flap down and see where it stalls with the flaps. Okay, there's all the power out. There's 49, 48, 47, and it's just mushing down. And we'll recover, flaps are coming up. So we did brake a little bit on the left side there, which was also, again, very benign. There wasn't too much going on, which is great. And it just shows you how slow these aeroplanes can fly. So the brake there was about 46 knots, maybe 45 more or less. We'll probably be able to see that on the camera. But here we are at now 86 knots. Our flaps are all the way in, and we are doing steep turns. Trying to hold some altitude. There we go. And we can see that we are actually spinning on a dime right now, which is wild. So that's right turn to the right. Let's do one to the left. Nice thing with the angle of attack indicator on the Garmin is that because we are in a fairly steep angle here, we are able to hear that angle of attack indicator beeping on us. As soon as we hear it beeping, we just kind of relieve the back pressure, just so we don't stall in this unusual attitude. So we'll come out on heading. We're overhead Brits Airfield, yeah? We are at about 3,500 feet now above the ground. And as per the laws in South Africa, any aerobatic maneuvers that are conducted need to be at least recovered by 2,000 feet above the ground. So we're going to give ourselves a little bit of room, and we'll do a roll to the left, roll to the right. We do need to pick up some speed, so push the throttle forward. Okay, there's 8,000 feet. What we're going to do is we're going to level off first, stop, and we're going to pitch for 25 degrees up, stop, and roll over. So there is our first roll to the left. We'll start another one shortly to the right. So we got 135 knots. There's level. We're going to pull, stop, roll to the right. Next maneuver to do a sort of wing over to get ourselves flying back in the opposite direction. There's 140. We're going to stop it. We're going to pull, wing over. Okay, we'll do one more roll going this direction, and then we'll show you our high-powered cruise. Pitch up, stop, roll over. Alright, so autopilot's going to come back on, and we're going to level in this direction. Okay, we're 7,800 feet. And we've got 70% power, doing 141 knots indicated, 162 knots true. And we can bring that fuel burn down just a touch. Probably get it to about 39, 38 litres an hour. Here we are, about 37 litres an hour, doing 162 knots. We'll start turning back to the south. Okay, so it seems like my camera over here has died, which is frustrating. But we are taking the aeroplane back in for a landing now. And we'll just talk through the landing a little bit. Eagles Creek traffic today, Charlie Oscar coming up overhead, the field, join left down 126.
Caution, terrain.
We tend to have a bit of a tailwind, maybe slight crosswinds from the north, blowing through the hangars. So it's certainly a runway which needs to be respected. It is not easy to land on this runway. But we're going to give it our best shot, and hopefully this camera here and the wing camera can catch it quite nicely. We're already starting our downwind. First stage of flaps is down. We can get all of them down, because we want to come down pretty quickly. Get that trim
ahead. Pull up.
Alright, still quite high. Another obstacle at this runway is these giant power lines on final approach. So we actually have to turn before the power lines, because the approach is down the hill and then it comes back up the hill as you start your flare, which is just, yeah, interesting to say the least. Okay, there's not too much wind today, but it is slight tailwind. You can feel it already.
Pull up.
And we approach at 70 knots.
Pull up.
Slight little crosswind from the right.
Pull up. Pull up. Pull up.
And we're on the ground. So we can't do any touch and goes here. And if we are going to practice landings, we keep it to a very minimum. We stop and roll all the way to the top. Today we're not going to do that. Right, so we are on the ground. Flaps are going to come up. And our mixture is going to be pulled back for taxi. Okay, this is one thing. This is where it becomes a greenhouse. I'm actually going to have to open the canopy now. It is so hot. So this camera is going to move backwards, but that's okay. We'll chat to you again when we shut down the aircraft. I'll close the canopy when we do shut it down, just so you can see the procedure of how to shut down this aeroplane. Alright, shutdown procedure in this aeroplane is we want to get the flaps down. The flow is kind of right to left when we shut down, left to right when we start up. So we'll get the flaps all the way down, just so no one stands on these while we are taxiing. We're going to get our prop all the way in. Our throttle is all the way at idle. Autopilot and taxi lights coming off. Alright. The next thing we want to do is test our mags. So we're going to switch them to off, just make sure that the mags are grounded and that the engine is not going to start up if someone touches the prop after shutdown. So we'll go to off. Engine wants to die, which is great. And then we're going to go done and dusted. We have landed back at Eagles Creek, and that was my little video that I wanted to do just with regards to taking this RV-7 through its paces, taking it through its speeds, taking through some basic aerobatics, some climb speeds, all the performance information that you may want to know, real life performance information. Of course, we can get all this information from the internet and all the reports and publications that vans do produce, but every plane is slightly different. So this is my van's RV-7. I am going to get back to cleaning this aeroplane now. See, the sun is now coming over, so it's not going to make it that easy, but before it does come over too much, I think I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for watching, and we surely do hope to see you on the next one.